Well, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode number 1018. This is for Monday, the 21st of July, 2025. Dog days of summer are here. And again, for the next couple of weeks, there will be no pre show because of the scheduling here. We will go back to the regular pre show schedule on August 11th. On August 11th, I'll be back in a position to get the pre-show going about 10 minutes before showtime here. So, but no pre-show. We're going to go right into this, and it's going to be a good show tonight. If you've never watched the pre-show, it's magical. But again, we'll bring back the pre-show on Monday, August 11th, which will be here before you know it. And I do know that we've got some regulars that are out tonight, but I think everybody else is in. And let's see, Rick Smith, are you good to go? James Adelot, are you guys here? I think you're all here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, I will be pulling down some audio files during the introductory part of this, and we should be good to go with those once we get about 5 or 6 minutes in. So let's get this sucker rolling here, and we'll get everybody going. So let's get track one and track two. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
WeatherBrains episode 1018, 1018 for the 21st of July, 2025. Dog days of summer. Hot. We're here in the middle of summertime, but actually what's odd is school begins here in a couple of weeks. Troy Kimmel, when does school start in Texas for the public schools? I think we're like 2 weeks away here. They start in early August.
Yeah. I think it is mid-August, from what I understand. Universities are a little bit later than that, but yeah, I think middle August for Austin area.
Yeah, and we got college football is going to start soon. How's the Longhorns looking this year?
You know, I've lost kind of touch with my Longhorns and Aggies this year, but I'll be working for emergency management for the ball games here at the University of Texas. Doing a little work also for A&M, so Thanksgiving will be interesting. Yeah, I just hadn't heard much. I found out through the years that preseason rankings will sink you, so I don't pay much attention to those.
Welcome to College Football Brains,
Yep.
And John Gordon. So who you pulling for, John? Just out of curiosity, when college football starts, who you like? Who you pulling for?
Well, when I first showed up in Alabama, I had to declare that second. Are you with us or are you with that place in Southeast Alabama?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
when I came
Auburn
to Louisville,
or Alabama. So what do you do in Louisville? Who do you pull for?
In Louisville, they wanted me to declare red or blue. I'm like, you mean Republican, Democrat? No, Cardinals, Wildcats. So
You've retired from federal service. You could take your pick now. Who you pulling for? Let's get real here.
In the state, I root for anyone but Rick Pitino. So in that case, he's gone, thank God. So I root for U of L, unless Pitino is anywhere, because he will hurt you wherever he goes.
Wow. And that's a show title. So let's go up to the Arctic Circle to Jen Nairmore, who is busy. These are busy times. Jen, you're busy.
I am busy. It's a lot. It's great up here. It is a little cold up here, 75 right now, compared to what we've had. I know, Troy, I'm so sorry.
I know.
We're down to 55 tonight, so I'm going to open the windows up. It's going to be great. And yeah, warm back up into the 90s and just hanging in up here, doing my thing.
Doing your thing. Okay, Dr. Kim Cloko McLean, the world's greatest behavioral scientist, meteorologist, commissioner, you name it.
Amen.
Kim's it. Kim, how are you?
Amen.
The world's greatest intersection of those things, which means there's one of me. So yes, I will accept that. I'm doing okay, but yeah, it's been getting hot here. And I'm looking at the mediagram from the Oklahoma Mesonet over the last week, and you can see we're just in this slow creep up like a degree a day or so, and without ceasing. It's getting to the point of I'm ready for this to be over.
Hang on.
Uh, yeah, and we got a long way to go. So, Rick Smith, you're just down the street. You've been in Oklahoma for a while. It's July in Oklahoma. What do you do? Enjoy it.
Yeah, just if we could fast forward, that would be fine with me. We've really been lucky this year. We haven't had summer until just recently. We had a lot of rain and lots of humidity, but we haven't had, it's been a lot hotter a lot earlier here, so can't complain too much, but we will anyway.
Yeah, that's what we do on this show is complain. But let's go. This is going to be a good show tonight. So James ate a lot. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you bring in our guests, and we'll get this thing rolling. I can't wait to get the show topic underway. So the floor, sir, belongs to you.
All right, we've got a Hall of Fame show here today to discuss and pay tribute to a Hall of Fame meteorologist, Gary England. And I'm actually going to pivot and throw it back to Rick Smith, and we will introduce two of our power hitter guests, and then I'll introduce the third.
Yeah, we're going to be throwing back and forth a lot, and hopefully nobody gets hurt in the crossfire here. So, James Spann, do you have clip number 1 ready to go?
I do not. This is where I'm going to pull them down as we speak. So give me about 3 minutes, and we will have all of these clips.
All right, we will wait for that. Well, we're here to honor a legend, really. Oklahoma and the weather community lost a real legend earlier this year when Gary England passed away on June 10th, 2025. Gary was 85 years old, and he spent nearly half of his life, 41 years, as chief meteorologist at KWTV here in Oklahoma City. Most of us call it News 9. Tonight we have 3 guest WeatherBrains to help us remember Gary England, who really was a pioneer. There's no hyperbole when we say in the world of broadcasting and TV weather, he really was a trailblazer. Our first 2 guests appeared on episode 946. It doesn't seem like it was last year, but it was March 5th of last year. We have David Payne, chief meteorologist at Channel 9 in Oklahoma City, who had what some would call the unenviable task of replacing Gary England when Gary left in the summer of 2013. David's a native Oklahoman and an OU graduate, and before assuming the chief role at News 9, David spent 19 years at KFR TV in Oklahoma City. David is joined by Lacy Swope. Lacy is the morning meteorologist at News 9. She's also an OU graduate, so the OU graduates or attendees we outnumber you guys tonight. So, and Lacy's been at KWTV since 2011, but she interned with Gary while she was attending OU and got to work with Gary for several years. So that's our first 2 guests. James A., I'll throw it back over to you.
All right.
And by the way, I do have the clips ready whenever you find gentlemen are ready. I've got all clips locked and loaded.
Awesome.
Man, that is efficiency. All right. I'll introduce Barbara Merckx, who I got to meet, had the privilege of working with at NBC5 in Dallas-Fort Worth. And she had come there from KWTV. Now, Barbara is now, I believe it's news director is your title, at OU Nightly at the OU Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication. Her business card is way long like that. And that is a student-led, student-produced newscast and has real meteorology in it and has did great work during severe weather last spring when Norman had a tornado warning too, and they just did coverage on OU Nightly as weather, and it went really well. I got a lot of great comments from that. And so Barbara not only grew up in Oklahoma, but she worked at News 9 with Gary and then worked with me. So we won't ask her how much better Gary was to work with than I was. But I think you can roll the intro because Bill had a great intro for Gary.
All right. So we're going to play cut number 1, correct?
Yes, sir.
Here we go.
Tonight's guest WeatherBrain is a Boomer Sooner, a graduate of the University of Oklahoma. He's the first television meteorologist to bring Doppler radar-based tornado warnings to the public. He was in the movie Twister. He's considered to be the top-rated meteorologist in the state of Oklahoma. He's won numerous awards, including 2 Emmys. And tonight it's an honor to have the director of meteorology for KWTV in Oklahoma City on the show. Gary England
knows more about Oklahoma weather than News 9's chief meteorologist, Gary England.
We're still watching one. This tornado is moving on to the northeast in about 30 to 40.
Because for more than 35 years, Gary England has helped guide you through about 1,000 tornadoes.
There's a tornado about 15 miles south of Enid. We have one supercell on radar. It is on the ground doing damage at this time.
More than 100,000 thunderstorms.
Some severe thunderstorms in Caddo.
Over 60 major ice and snowstorms.
Heavy snow warning for a good part of the state, including the metro. And we've got around 12 inches of snow in central Oklahoma. I would expect slip roads in the morning.
And quite a few sunny days as well.
Terrific weather coming up. Light winds, clear skies, mild temperatures. You're going to love it.
So when you add it all up, nobody knows more about Oklahoma weather than Gary England. Gary England, Oklahoma's #1 meteorologist, only on News 9, where he's making a difference.
Hey, Gary, I had to steal that promo off of YouTube and play it on there because you really are a legend in the state of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you, sir. But we all always need to keep in mind, never believe the hype.
And that's Gary kind of in a nutshell right there. Never believe the hype. What an intro there. I'm glad, Jen, you pulled that clip because we couldn't do a better one than that. I mean, we're going to talk about Gary tonight. We're going to share stories. We're going to, kind of talk about his legacy, his career with, David and Lacy both worked with him or against him, not against him, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And Barbara got to work with him. So, and some others of us may have stories. I mean, I got here in 2002 and I obviously knew Gary, of Gary long before that. I'd read his book, and I think the May 3rd, 99 tornado outbreak kind of made him a little bit more visible nationally. We'll talk about that, but let's just kind of start off with Lacy. Maybe talk briefly about how you met Gary. How did you come to be able to be an intern at Channel 9, and how did that lead into your current career at some later point?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here to be able to talk about him with all of you guys. And really, my interaction with Gary, it did change the entire course of my life because I didn't want to go into broadcast. I was at OU. I knew I loved weather. I loved meteorology, but I really wanted to go into the private sector or maybe go on and get my master's and do more research. So I wasn't really sure, but I had a friend who was interning with Gary, and he was one of my friends in my class. And he said, hey, I've got to be gone for the summer, but you talk and you talk a lot. I really think you would love this broadcast thing. You should see, they're going to let somebody fill my gap while I'm gone for the summer. And you should just go up there and hang out for the summer. And I was like, first of all, there's no way they're going to let me. I'd never been to a TV station ever. Didn't really know what it was all about, how it worked, no clue, never been on a green screen. And I was like, but hey, and I was at that point, I'm meeting everyone I could possibly meet, and a chance to even meet Gary when I was in college. I was like, absolutely. So I called them, they set up an interview, and I thought the interview was going to be with his secretary, and it was with him. So I walk into this TV station. I remember I had to stop at Dillard's in Norman at the mall there and buy like a suit jacket. I own nothing like that. And I go up there, and Gary was the one that talked to me. And he was like, I see a lot of potential. I think you should do this. I would love to have you for the summer, and you can come and hang out when we have weather. You can be here. You can intern on the weekends, and we'll just see how it goes. But I think this is something you should do. Well, you're not going to say no when the legend himself is telling you this is something you should do. So that summer, which was the summer before my senior year of college, I interned with Gary. I was there as much as I possibly could. There was no restriction. I probably drove him crazy because I was like, you said I can be here on the weekend. I'm going to be here on Monday through Friday. I'm going to be here as often as I possibly can just to learn from everybody. And that's what I did. It turned into both my friend Luke and I both interning in the fall. So they didn't kick me out once the summer ended. I interned through the fall and I interned through the spring. And then I got to be there for severe weather events. I got to be there for all the winter weather events, learn forecasting, all of that. And I changed my major to broadcast meteorology. I actually decided this is what I want to do. I'm going to pursue this. I spent tons of time on the green screen. Gary would do, the evening shows, and then he had a dinner break. And he would normally go to dinner with his wife, or he would eat dinner in his office. But there were oftentimes, if I was there, he would come out in the studio and spend time with me. He would stand behind the camera and have me talk to the camera, which there's nothing more nerve-wracking in your life than to be a 20-year-old talking, doing weather on the green screen with Gary staring back at you. And I was a nervous wreck. I was awful, awful, awful. But he was there to give me incredible advice. Fast forward to my senior year, I graduate. There's no way I can start in Oklahoma City. I had to go to Market 145, and that is where I belonged 100% in the television world. And I was there for a year in Sioux City, Iowa. And I decided this market's not for me. This place isn't for me. My husband and I wanted to get back to Oklahoma. And so I just emailed Gary and said, hey, I'm going to come back. I will take out the trash. I will go get coffee. If there's anything there I can do, I'll probably go get a waitressing job and wait for something to open up. But I really want to be back in Oklahoma. I love severe weather. And I just want to be a part of the team if there's something available. And he said, you know what? Our weather producer is leaving in just a few weeks. And that position's opening up. And if you want it, it's yours. And it was just like that. It was just like that. So I became Gary England's weather producer, which my role was to come in at 9 o'clock in the morning and then just put together all the weather elements that were going to be happening during the day. Put together video if there was something exciting that had happened, cut storm tracker video. I edited it, but I would look across the country. He was very much into, you know, what's the big weather story across the country, across the world, make a graphic on it. How can we tie in what's going on and make it local to Oklahoma? And then he would come in with his forecast, we'd put stuff together. And anyway, I started as weather producer. And then from then I started filling in on air. He would still work with me. And like I said, I was awful. I was so awful. My voice is not, I don't have a radio voice. I don't have a TV voice. It's not my gift. But he paid for me personally to have have voice lessons to try to help with that. Cause he was like, it's your breathing. You get so nervous that my voice just like shuts off. It really would. And so he paid for me to have voice lessons where I would learn to breathe properly. I'm still not good at it, but it helped a ton. And from there I started filling in. And from there I ended up getting shows and just kind of moving up as far as shows go. And I never would have seen myself on television if it wasn't for him saying, yeah, you should take the summer internship. It's wild to think about.
That's amazing. I've never heard the whole story, and it's so impressive how down to earth he was, and how he just really wanted to help, and he saw the potential in you, and was willing to work with you. I mean, that's got to be pretty rare in, well, anywhere in any business probably, but probably in the TV world. So that's really cool. All right, David, let's get you in here. Now, you got to work with Gary for a short time. There was a little bit of overlap there. But for many years, you were at the other station down the street. And however much you want to, I mean, what was it like in general, in as general terms as you want to use, what was it like working at the competing station with Gary England? That had to be, I don't know what it had to be. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, obviously, this market it's so competitive. Weather drives it, as it does, well, really all markets. But it was competitive. I mean, but I had obviously respect for him. I'm born and raised here. I was born in Guthrie, and I was born 30 miles north of where I'm sitting right now. So I grew up watching, and so I always had respect for him. I just give you an example. He came and spoke to my 7th grade class up in Edmond, and he gave books out, and he signed a book for me. And I was always a big fan. I mean, I watched him from day one, and then back in the day, this was back in the 70s. He was this piece of equipment, and somebody on here might know more about it than I still have it in my house, and it was a metal box about this big, and it had an antenna on it. This is like 1978, and it had severe storm warning, tornado warning, winter storm warning, flood warning. It had 4 lights and 4 text, and back then it would use whatever communication to go off if you were in one of those warnings. And so I got that box for Christmas, and you had to go through Channel 9 to get that box. And I still have it. It's a stainless steel. And I remember I thought that was and it has news or, KWTV on the top of it. I thought that was the coolest thing because nobody in the country had that. Basically, I had the first, whatever, I don't know, something that was, and I would wait for this little tiny red light to go off, and I would sit there for hours. And so, it all began back then. And then let's just fast forward. So I grew up watching him. And in this market, we had Fred Norman, we had people like Jim Williams. And Jim Williams was a huge icon at 4. And, he was military, but man, this guy was analyzing, dry lines and stuff. Well, so was Gary, but they were both doing the same thing. And I liked both of them, and I liked to watch both of them. But you had this guy over here doing this, but you had Gary doing it a different way. And that's what I respected about Gary was there were so many people, at the time kind of doing the same thing. Everybody kind of looked the same. And even in this market, everybody did, this is the way we're going to do this, and this is what it looked like. And he, even from a young age, I realized that he did things differently. And I always thought that was, in part, I think maybe a large part to his success and the success he had. So I was always a big fan, always, watched him. Fast forward to the 1980, when he, and News 9 come up with a live radar that you can see storms on. We couldn't, no one showed anything. We had no idea. Well, and by the way, back then, the color palette was all jacked up. So you would see it, and it would be a big black hole. And it was like, oh my, we're going to die, and just the radar presentation. I remember the Eta tornado back then, and there was a tiny couplet. Today, you'd be like, what is that? But tornado was going through Eta. And I remember watching, and, it's just that separated him. And whenever he came in and was using live radar, that was the game changer. That basically gobbled everybody else up in town. Because they were all pretty even. The playing field was pretty even as far as technology. And then he comes in with a live radar. Well, now he's the 300-pound gorilla, and it was over with. So, and then everybody else came into play, but years later. So, total domination. As I was growing up and watching him, I always thought, like I said, his style was unique. Talking about Lacy's story about being an intern. So my freshman year at OU, I was introduced at a party to Molly England, which was his daughter. And it was my second semester at OU. And I was like, hey, and I kind of got to know her. I went to a party with her. I had a girlfriend. We were just friends, but she knew that I loved weather. And I told her about my growing up and all this. And another story, I broke my legs on a motorcycle when I was young. And my grandmother wrote Gary and said, hey, my grandson's a big fan. Just give him, and I still have a card. And he wrote, break a leg. I mean, seriously, what's wrong with you? He just made a big joke. And I got, anyway, he just, he went the extra mile. So fast forward, I go to the station. I go to News 9, which was our old building, which we were just at, a couple of years ago. And Molly introduces me to Gary. I'm a freshman. I'm like, hey, and second semester. And so I take a tour of the weather center and meet him and hang out. And I tell him this a couple of these same stories. Anyway, I write him a letter like a week later and said, hey, thanks for the invite and for coming up. And I really appreciate it. And Molly's great. Your daughter's sweet. And I really appreciate taking the time. I said, I love doing an internship. Can I do one next semester? And he flat out wrote me back and he goes, no, I don't take sophomores. And I was like,
that's
okay.
What he told me too.
Right. So, and he didn't. So I was like, okay, so I didn't ever intern, and I interned across the street actually 2 years later. And so anyway, but talking about the market itself, the one thing that, like I said, I realized about him was the ability to be different. And you can go back and look at the movie Twister, and he was first at this, and the radar he had, and the warn system, and the storm track. He was on that front lip of doing storm tracks and all that stuff. But it came down to, I still think even without that stuff, I mean, you have to have the technology, obviously. That's part of the game too. But it was him, his personality, the things that he said. And if everybody in town would have had the same radar and same this and same that, he still would have been where he was. I just think the personality is what took him. He resonated with people. He was like the uncle that came over at Christmas that said the weird things, and you were like, God, I don't know who this guy is, but I like him. people were drawn to him, and it was such a large part of his 40 plus years at News 9. I mean, not to mention all the other accolades. I mean, the movies, everything else he did. So, he was competition. I mean, across town. I mean, yeah, and I'll tell this story. We had, and this I don't know if I've ever. I know Lacy knows this story, but we met at one time, and we met because we were possibly talking about me coming over with him there, and I was so brutally honest, and he said, he goes, I've watched you for a long time. This is like 1 minute into this conversation with him. And I go, well, thank you. I said, and I'd met him before, but because I've been watching you for a long time. So, well, thank you. I've watched you since I was a child. I mean, I had, and he goes, but you've been a very competitive thorn in my side for a long time. Then he starts laughing, and I'm like, I didn't know how to take that. I'm a competitor, but anyway. And he goes, no, because I really respect, what you've done and everything. But, you weren't going to outwork him. You were going to try, but he worked so hard. He gave so much, and he was always on his game. I mean, even till the very end, till he retired, so competitive, wanted to win, just always gave 110%. And I respected every bit of that about him.
Awesome. David, I'm gonna play off that and ask Barbara. After growing up in Oklahoma, watching Gary, and not just watching Gary, but watching Gary at probably some of the most stressful times as an Oklahoman growing up, what was it like to go work with the man and then attempt to maybe provide some supervision or guidance to the man from time to time? Because, Frank Sinatra had the song My Way, but I think he wrote it about Gary England.
Much like David and Lacy, I mean, I grew up in Norman, and I grew up, with the three beeps. And the first thing that you learn when you're behind the scenes is before the beeps were priority one, let's go, 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 go. And most of you on here, I actually am connected with on LinkedIn, and that I think James is. You read my post. I found the priority one clip that, I mean, it was out there on YouTube from, I think it must have been in the 80s. He's saying priority one. This is back before, we didn't have iPhones. We didn't have an intercom. He rigged up it was like, the speaker at the apartment, like you hit the button and you go, hi, I'm here for so-and-so. That's what went into the control room. And you would hear this like squawk box, priority one, let's go. And that meant, I mean, the director, everybody had to be ready to go. Where Lacy or Jenny Wagner Quartz or Ron Olson, they were Gary's weather producer. I'm in the control room with, we got to get the graphic up. We got to do this. And I'm having to call traffic and saying, okay, Gary's on. And you didn't ever know when Gary was going to go off, And so that was really my first experience, was everything that I knew growing up. I'd produced in other places. When I came to Channel 9, I came from working with Troy Kimmel in Austin. But there was nothing like the control room and the newsroom at Channel 9 when there was a tornado on the ground. We know he kind of coined the phrase that, and, get Val on the Getner. Once he said priority one, everybody was, I mean, you stopped all the joking around, you got on the air, and, that's something I think everybody does now inside newsrooms. There's some kind of, I mean, at OU Nightly, we have a red, green, and yellow system, and it was developed by a senior weather producer who had done an internship at Channel 9 with Gary. And he said, they have priority one. Priority two meant, you need to hustle, but not as much. And priority three was kind of hey, we need to be aware. We might need extra people in, we're watching it. And he said, we need to teach people that. And, I wasn't the news director at OU Nightly at the time, but I was an adjunct, and I went with this student to the news director and said, he's right. You have to start teaching people how you do weather. How do you tell everybody we got to get on, and we got to get on now? And priority one was it. So that's the first thing I learned, but it's the thing that I still carry today is, when your meteorologist says we got to go, there's no time. You don't ask questions. You don't, you go.
How did that shape what you're doing at OU Nightly and what you're trying to, I guess, inculcate, for lack of a better word, into the generation that's coming up now?
Well, I think, they have to know, unless they are fortunate enough to do an internship at, all three of the stations in Oklahoma City take weather equally as seriously. Channel 9 is still, far and above the rest, but they have to learn the seriousness of, we have to go on the air now. We can't wait. Let's wait for a commercial break, whatever. So in learning that, we kind of instill that sense of urgency. That's all from Gary. My time with him being in the control room, and, I was one of the people in the control room on May 3rd of 1999. And that wasn't just one tornado. It was multiple tornadoes. And so how do you get that and keep it going? That's one of the things that, we try to teach them. And that's why we let students go on the air. It's not like anybody's turning away from, Channel 9 or Channel 4 to watch them, except when we do have something that comes over Norman. We keep them hyper focused on campus and Norman. And if there's a true tornado outbreak, if there's a storm also in Shawnee and Guthrie and, Chickasha, we say you're the campus weather authority. So you talk to OU and Norman. So that's the only difference in what I'm teaching them and helping them teach each other is, we stay on the one area, but the sense of urgency. The other thing that I will say that Lacy talked about that I go in and hound the students on, because Gary taught that to me, is what does the weather that's coming this way look like? And so a lot of times in the winter, you'll get snow in Denver, and he was very visual. How do we, is there something on CBS News Path or whatever? Can you get some snow out of Denver? Can you, whatever? And they're getting used to me going on to, hey, we're looking on CNN and this is coming this way, or there's a wildfire in California and there are Oklahoma firefighters out there. Let's put that into weather.
Barbara, you touched on something, and I don't want to monopolize the whole conversation because everybody else has questions too. But Lacy and David, one thing Gary did that took a while for it to soak into me watching as a student at OU was just how relevant the information was he passed on. Mm-hmm. It was like he got the fact that he was communicating for the people listening to that message that needed to know, not for him saying what he thought they needed to know. And that was when it dawned on me what he was doing. I'm like, man, he is a master at communication.
Yeah, I think, he was very good about, I think, what's happening right now, where the threat is and where it's going to be. I think having the ability to also make people feel a little bit at ease, and I've taken some of that away. I try to make not lighthearted, but at least try to change the pace of this is all horrible. There are times of it's bad, but for right now, we can at least take a breath. And I think, he was from that camp. And that's what I learned from him too, is that you're right, putting people at ease, but also, being confident of, hey, this is where it is. We see it. Well, I know exactly where this is. This tornado is between A and B, and it's right here. And this is where it's going to be in 20 minutes. And you didn't doubt it. I mean, what he said was, okay, this is where it is, and we're going to be fine. And if you're north of that, you're good. Go home, do whatever. But if you're, it was comforting. I mean, it was, he was comforting. I mean, and I think it carried him a long way for sure.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about, Lacy talked a lot about his mentorship and how great he was helping her get, helping you, Lacy, get your start in meteorology. We got a clip here that kind of, we asked Gary on an earlier show that he was on if he had any advice for new meteorologists. So, James, this is great advice, I think, not just for TV meteorologists, but for anybody that's presenting weather information. So, James, can we play clip 5?
Number 5, here we go.
What would you suggest to a new meteorologist? How can they most effectively and most quickly understand their audience?
Well, one thing is learn how to pronounce the towns and the streets.
Yes.
We've got a town named Visay. We got a bunch of strange, but Visay. And you can tell a new one down. They call it Vicky. The tornado is near Vicky. And everybody said, where in the world is Vicky? And so learn to pronounce. Get you a pronunciation guide for the towns. We got Taha and all these things, and these new ones come in here, and the audience instantly know this guy's a newbie, and he doesn't know Oklahoma, and he's probably from New York City.
You have one chance. You have one chance, and if you lose them, you can't get them back.
Yeah, learn the names of the towns, learn where they are, where the population centers are. Always look. I always check out. Now you can do it on satellite. You can check for the mobile home parks. There's a lot of people in those, and it's extremely dangerous. And so I pretty well know my market, so I think everybody gets in and wherever they are, they have to learn their market of where things are, the people are there, the demographics that are there, their late night shifts, or people going to work at midnight and getting off at 6, whatever. Find out who works when. Do you have big factories in your area where people are in there? So there's so much to keep in mind that you can hardly keep it up, but you can do it. Listen, if I can do it, you can do it. I'm sealing Oklahoma, baby.
Oh my goodness, that is so charming. Honestly, I loved listening to his pronunciations of towns. It's one of the ways I got to know towns as a transplant coming into Oklahoma for first for a summer research internship in undergrad, and then eventually for graduate school. The very first time that I turned on a TV and got reception and was I'd moved into the apartments here on campus, was trying to figure out Oklahoma. And the first station I was able to get was Channel 9. And Gary England was on. And it was late May that I'd moved. So of course there was a tornado somewhere in Oklahoma. And he was broadcasting live with a helicopter flying around a tornado. It was a low precip storm, beautiful, like stovepipe tornado out in northwest Oklahoma, not too far probably from Visay. And he couldn't have been more calm. He was so calm. And me coming in from, outside Chicago and northern Indiana, I'd never seen anything like this in my life. And I thought, well, tornadoes in my experience were, if you get them that far north, it tends to be kind of bimodal. There's not tornadoes or they're really bad. And there was no such thing as a tornado that you could feel calm about, or that we interrogated that way. We didn't have helicopters that flew around these things. We couldn't see these things. It was a completely different culture. And I watched in like amazement. I was like, where am I? And what are these? Like, these people are so different from me and so adapted to this thing that I think is just terrifying. But what I got from him was this sense of controllability. You are able to do something about this. And it's exactly what David and Lacy, what you were talking about. He gave you what you needed to know. and walked you through it. And he was telling people, who needed to be getting into their shelter, who needed to be taking their precautions, and who was kind of in the clear. And it was such a direct call to action that none of the rest of us had to feel panicked, and we could just kind of watch and be part of the weather culture together. And it was an invitation in to to participate and to be part and to learn. And I've carried that with me as a behavioral scientist, in this field. It's long been a part of my heart, no doubt impacted by him, to think about, are we communicating to people in a way that helps them to make decisions in a calm and reasoned way? And there is every reason to believe that for most people, they can do something to keep themselves safe in the face of these things. We don't need to hit them over the head, and scare them to pieces. We can be calm, and we can help them to process, and we can get them through the situation. So I'll say, my perspective, of course, is a little different from everybody here, being from Oklahoma and the Southern Plains generally. But even for me, coming in and not knowing him personally, he affected me. He affected me a lot, and he helped me adapt to a new place that I had never been. I knew I wanted to study meteorology, but I still had to grapple with actually living here and putting myself here. And I really appreciated everything that he did.
And just to follow up on what Kim said, the communication during severe weather is, as you said, to get people to take cover if they need to take cover. But what Gary did so masterfully also is keep people calm, and the people that didn't need to take cover knew it. They didn't worry. Oh, is this coming to me? Is this coming to me? No. He said north of 122nd, we're fine. And he was a master at that. Just like a big warm blanket.
And also just I've told this to younger people in the newsroom, and we are in our jobs on those big days, to give the vital information of where this is. You want to say the right words at the right time. But we are in a little bit of the entertainment business. We are. And he figured that out early. And that's what I recognized why he was so different, especially when I became a competitor across town for 20 years. As I got into the business, I was like, okay, hang on a second. All right. So, and I realized early on, and I think it was just growing up watching him, he was entertaining. He was fun to watch. It's never boring. Never. I mean, my motto is there's no such thing as rain. Rain, it's everything. I love, we all love it. We like to talk about it. And I always felt like with him, he was always excited about it. And so if you love it, I think that resonated through the TV set. And so, but he was entertaining, he I don't know. He was like an uncle. It really reminds me of an uncle that passed away a few years ago. And he was just kind of that same, listen to him talk. But he latched on to, there's an entertainment value that makes people, you can be really good, but if you throw that into it, then they're going to watch you even more. And I think he figured that out a long, long time ago. Whether he would ever admit that, I don't know. But I think he knew that he was entertaining, and he said the right things and quirky things, and he was successful. Very.
I picked up on that just real quick too. My first year there, I was as a full-time employee at News 9, and we were coming into the spring, so it would have been the spring of 2012, and we had severe weather ongoing. We had, he'd been doing cut-ins. So he'd been there in the evening and he'd been doing cut-ins. Well, he decided he wanted the weekend guy to start doing cut-ins. So his name was Nick Bender. He's now in Kansas City. He's a great friend, a great Met. He had said, hey, Nick, you take over these cut-ins for a little bit, get some experience. Things are kind of winding down. Well, here comes Nick. And he's all serious, like we all were. I mean, we're all trying to be like this professional, impress Gary type of mode. So Nick is on the air and he's given here's where the storm is, here's where it's going, might have some quarter-size hail and 60-mile-an-hour winds, and he's really getting into it. And Gary says, hey, he walks up behind him on air and hands him a piece of paper. And he said, hey, Nick, you need to look at this. So Nick takes it. He's like, okay, I'm just getting some information from Gary. Here's the information. And he gets it and he starts reading it. And he's like, Gary, this is a menu. You just handed me a menu. And Gary's like, I know. What do you want for dinner? I'm about to order dinner. And on the air. So Nick is just like, what do I do? How do I handle that? But we all laughed about it. We talked about this just a couple of weeks ago. That was the kind of stuff he did where it was like, it's not serious. This is not, and for viewers at home, I mean, my goodness, that little moment, they were like, Gary just handed Nick a menu. I guess we're good to go to bed. But it taught me so much. When it's not serious, it's not serious.
I'll weigh in on that. What you just said, Lacy, when it's not serious, it's not serious. I was the 10 o'clock producer in 2006 and 7 and first part of 2008. And that's then I went to Dallas. But he had started this thing everybody knows, Friday Night in the Big Town. Well, he had gotten with marketing, and there were a few years in there where we had an open, and we had there was a song, it's Friday Night in the Big Old Town, and there was a little bouncing ball like you were at the movies. And he literally, said to me, Barb, it's 100 degrees in July and August. Nobody wants to watch me, but they do want to watch my videos. And so, the first few times he had interesting weather video, there was a night that he pulled up, I don't know if it was Ceiling or where, there's old time video of Gary at a rodeo, and he's, in on a bucking bronc or something. He's got music on it. It was as, Western Oklahoma as you could be. And I got in his ear during the break, and I'm like, Gary, this is the news. It's not hee-haw. And he was like, salute. Just, he never missed a beat. He, when it was time to say priority one, he was serious, but he was absolutely an entertainer. And, a lot of, David, I see some of the things that you say now, and I'm like, Gary would have said, grandma's making pancakes or whatever. But he knew that also resonated with Oklahomans, people in the mid part of the country. I think Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, southeast, southwest Missouri. He got that, and he knew his audience, and he knew how to keep them engaged even when it was 105 in the shade.
Yeah. And he did it quite well. Like I said, there's an entertainment value, and it's not, you have a big 12-hour day. We've done so many of those now, and, it's not tornadoes on the ground for 12 hours. You have times in there, and I picked up real early, hey, throw in a little bit of this or that, and people will keep watching, Yeah, even though when they're not in danger, people still say, we watch, that's what you want them to watch no matter what. So if they're not in danger, as long as they're still watching, still counts. And so, that was, I think he was one of the first ones in the country that really, really, I think, capitalized on that. And he recognized that way, way early. But like I said, before he had the radar, I think he realized, hang on a second, and there were some other ones. There's, of course, yes, there's been others, but he was unique, that's for sure.
So I was stationed at Tinker Air Force Base, David, and the only reason that we had a TV in weather operations is because of Gary England.
Right.
Because he would call streets out, Southwest 112th Street, Western, and all we had was the conventional radar. We did not have that mapping ability, and that's the only reason we had it. So how many on the panel went and saw Gary England at those terrible twisters on a helicopter ride? Raise your hands. So I saw him in 87. He sold out a theater after the news. The whole theater was sold out. And then he saw a bunch of us in military. He came over and visited us 15 minutes. Couldn't have been nicer. He's the real deal. He's like Span. Span, you have another brother, Skilling, Span in England.
That just means we're old.
I got to throw in one Gary story here before I forget about it. I'm thinking as we're talking, but one of the coolest things and more unbelievable things that Gary did, I always got along really well with Gary. I mean, Gary had a long history with the Weather Service going back to Ken Crawford, and it wasn't always that congenial. And there you can read his books and read all about it. It's out there. But Gary was really respectful and nice, and I got to know Gary, and eventually my oldest daughter was in Palm. She did dance at football games and things like that. They were having their big senior banquet, and the theme was weather. So I don't know whose idea it was, but we thought it would be cool to get a TV meteorologist to kind of do a video to welcome the girls to this banquet or this dinner. And so I said, what the heck? All they can say is no. So I got in touch with Susan, who was Gary's assistant, and said, I've got this idea. What do you think? And shockingly, they said yes. So I wrote up a script with all the Garyisms in it. It's Sunday night in the big town. I adapted it for Palm. Take your Palm precautions, all the little Garyisms. And he put it on a teleprompter, and Michael Armstrong came in and helped him a little bit, and he recorded that video and gave it to me, and they played it at the Palm banquet. I mean, that was amazing to me. That just showed me that he was a real person, and that's still one of the coolest memories to this day. I had to go find it recently when I heard that he had passed away, and remember that memory. That was just pretty amazing. Yeah, Kim, you had something?
Well, we're remembering all of these, the fun mannerisms, and he had a way of letting people know when something was serious and, when it was more lighthearted, and how to, you can adapt this in your everyday life. It's almost like watching a cooking show, and it's fun. And so he makes watching the weather similar to watching, just any other kind of home and garden kind of show. Like, it's just part of your life. All right, here it is today. But there are times where it was serious, and you saw a very different Gary. And I'll never forget. I think he retired not too long after this, if I'm remembering right. But I'll never forget May 31st, 2013. It was the El Reno tornado day, and News 9. I had it on in the background as I was sort of preparing in case I needed to leave my apartment. And my plan was to go shelter at the weather center, like a mile from my apartment. And we'd had, days and days of storms after this was the year of the Moore tornado, the F5 that went through the elementary schools and all of that. So we were all on edge, right? And I heard in the background, I just sort of heard his voice change tone, and it made me look at the TV. And there was a helicopter, that News 9 had, that was flying over the traffic. And I had never seen him, I think, panic before, but he wasn't, I wouldn't say it was panicked. Like, he wasn't frenetic, but he was scared, and you could tell. And he was just saying, like, as he always did, to tell people what to do. He was saying, if you are on those roads, you have got to get off those roads. There's a 2-mile wide tornado. It is on the ground. It is heading right for those roads. You are better off getting out of your car, going to any of those buildings you can see. And I have never been so scared. And I'm grateful that I did not have to be on TV live for that. David Payne, you might have been live for that, and maybe you can remember that event in your own way.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what that had to be like. But he was remarkable in walking through a really difficult day.
Well, that was my first. I started here in January 1 of 13, and that was my first and last spring to chase at News 9. So I chased in the field, and then I did the 4 and the 5 o'clock show before Gary and I made the transition in late August. So I chased like I did at Channel 4, 2013. So I saw all that craziness, right? Those 12 days, basically. We had record lows the first 2 days of May, right? We were like, oh, nothing's going to happen this year. It's quiet. Look at this. And then the world comes to an end for those 3 days. I look back at what I think he was dealing with, because when you look at that day, first of all, the Oklahoma City market is always, since May 3rd, has been an open wound. People still mourn in the loss of May 3rd and all these other May 8th of 2003, May 9th of 2000. Go back, look, May 24th, 2011. Central Oklahoma is an open wound, always has been, and hopefully this will go away, but history says it won't. So I think that year alone, we had May 19th, May 20th. We'd already lost people. The city is Central Oklahoma is where all this has happened. We had those 2 horrible days, May 19th, May 20th, and then May 31st happens. By the way, we had other days in there too, where there were things going on. I mean, those were the 3 big days, and they were insane. Probably the 3 most violent, devastating days in Oklahoma's weather history. I think we could all probably agree on that, at least in a localized geographical area. Anyway, when everyone started to flee, I think at that point, I was chasing, and I was in that traffic. I chased the El Reno tornado, got back south and east, got back into the metro, got out ahead of it. It did weaken. We all know that it occluded, lifted north and all that. But when the traffic, but it came back again and produced some other tornadoes. I think what he was dealing with was a little bit of he couldn't do anything at that point. You can tell people, hey, go to your safe spot right now. Go to your lowest level if you don't have one. You know what I mean? You can give those instructions. Hey, this is a serious, potentially deadly tornado. You got to go now. You got to go. That was one of those things I felt like by listening, and I think back because he was in my ear the whole time. He knew that could have been potentially the worst case scenario for Oklahoma City. And I think, there are times when we've had these big events where you do get emotional on the air, and I'm sure all the TV Mets and Rick, when bad things are happening, and this goes for all the Mets in here, there are times where you have to step on the weather wall. I do it probably once a year. If something's happening, you step off the weather wall, and for just 10 seconds, I may pitch to a tracker, but it's how you kind of bring things back into the center because you know that it's happening and it's really, really, really bad. You've got to be composed. But I think that was one of those moments where I feel like there was nothing he could do. It didn't matter. I mean, everything he said did matter, but there's nothing he could do that if this thing were to set back down, and it had lifted at that point, but it was still producing some smaller tornadoes, that he knew it was going to be one of the worst things we had ever seen here in Oklahoma City. Because it was, I mean, I came down I-40. I didn't take I-40. I took every back road. I took the shoulder. I was doing things legally that I shouldn't have been doing, but my job, I was chasing. I had to keep up with this thing. And I know that was probably one of the worst overwhelming feelings that, besides May 3rd and some of the other big days that he had probably ever had to, look at. May 3rd of 99, the roads aren't like that. I mean, there was traffic, but nothing like that. So I just, that would have been a bad spot, and it could have been so much worse. But just the fact that he was able to, obviously he's a veteran, to stay composed and to say the right things. But that's just a hopeless feeling. It's a hopeless. Oh my gosh, if it cycles and sets back down, it's a mile wide. Oh my gosh, we're in trouble. But I heard that same thing in his voice that day a couple of times. There were a couple of things he said that day that were still very much Gary, but a little bit left of center of Gary, and it all stemmed from that. I mean, we knew we had over a 2-mile wide tornado, and where's it going to end up? And my gosh, it started, moved southeast and went north. I mean, it was crazy, right? So that was tough, and I know that was tough on him. It had to have been.
Yeah, that shot that Kim's talking about is burned into my brain because we had all the stations up on our wall in the office monitoring everything. And when I saw that was probably one of the most scared, the times I was the most scared in the office, just for what was about to happen. And I said, we're going to have to turn this off because, I mean, it was just, you saw this horrendous potential there, just lining up. But and he handled it as well as you possibly could in that situation. We've talked a lot about May 3rd. I mean, that was a big event, obviously. Fortunately, we don't have any audio of the May 31st or May 20th, May 19th coverage, but we do have some audio of the May 3rd, 1999 coverage. And I think this is a great example of how Gary communicated during a high-end historic event. So James, can we do clip number 3 now, please?
Huge wedge-shaped tornado, and as of yet, not crossing Interstate 44, but it's just southwest of Oklahoma City and southwest of the west-southwest of Norman. And what do you got? Yeah? Yeah. Talk to me.
Okay, Gary, I've never seen a tornado this large before. I've seen lots of tornadoes. This thing is huge.
As you look at this tornado, it's moving tornado. I see somebody driving down Interstate 44 to the north. That's control. If you're driving anywhere between Shea and Oklahoma City, get off that sucker now. If you got to run through a thick ditch. Yeah, it looks like it's going right down I-44.
Yeah, that's not good.
It's difficult to get off that thing. If anyone's on I-44 headed south right now toward Chickasha, I would turn around.
I just saw a power flash, big power flash.
Tuttle would be on the north edge of the circulation, so mainly hail there. Newcastle, 704. Mustang should go to your south. Come in around southwest 70. Come in at 7:08 p.m. at southwest 134th. 709 crossing I-44, which is very close to now. Coming in at southwest 104th at 744. More area, 722. Now, if it turns right, it will threaten. You're watching a long track, very rare event. These usually account for only about 2% of all tornadoes. They are deadly. You need to be below ground level to survive. Once again, for you children that are home, get a lot of pillows, a lot of blankets, and get in the bathtub, get in between the stool and the wall, pack those pillows and blankets, coats, whatever in there with you. If you don't have a cellar or a basement in the middle part of your house, go to a north wall or an east wall and get as many clothes and pillows and blankets around you. Get down on the floor and cover up your head and your face. Those of you way in the path of this storm, for example, in the Newcastle area and over toward Moore and maybe North Norman, if it turns right again, you have plenty of time to move to a place of safety. Storm Action 6, another tornado, Storm Action 6. Tornado on the ground, you folks in Fort Cobb, take immediate tornado precautions. This storm move, yeah, put him on. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Now you folks, as you folks watch this thing now, as you watch this, keep in mind, hey, Merry Christmas. I think it's very close to toll booth, so y'all know where the toll booth is. It's just a matter of miles down the road from Newcastle. So this storm is moving directly toward Newcastle at this particular time. This is a long track, potentially deadly tornado. It is best if you are below ground level. You know, you can find a basement in a building, a basement in a church, field reinforced buildings. Mobile homes will not survive this. You need to be below ground. Many regular structures will not survive this.
Gary.
Yes.
We're back within about half to 3/4 of a mile of it now. It's directly north of us.
Yes.
I think it's on the interstate right now, and it's got violent rotation.
I don't ever recall anything exactly like this.
Wow, that's tough to listen to. Even 26 years later, you can feel the tension, feel the and you can just hear it in Gary's voice as everybody's talked about. Barbara, I think you mentioned that you were actually there in the control room for that event. Really be interested in your perspective and what you noticed about Gary and his coverage during that historic event.
Well, this goes back to, a lot of years being the producer in the control room while Gary was on the air, but also when I was one of those kids at home listening to Gary. I remember the year I graduated from Norman High, the tornado sirens went off in Norman every single day, our senior week. And so, I remember when he starts talking to children, everybody in the control room, news people are, gritty and we can take anything and whatever. When he would talk to children, everybody stopped and thought about, maybe their kid, a younger brother or sister, something like that. That day, when Gary is at a loss for words and he kind of stops and he's watching and then goes, "Oh my God, Jiminy Christmas." I mean, how bad it is. As I was listening to that, I was thinking of the people. So there was a mother and son on 44 in Chickasha, and they were up underneath the overpass. And then there was also a woman in Moore who was up underneath the overpass, and they were sucked out from underneath there. And as he's talking about the toll booth and all of that, I'm thinking, okay, those people are being literally they got out of their cars and ran up underneath, where the cement meets the bridge. It was, you could have heard a pin drop in the control room. And a control room, especially during breaking news, is usually a pretty loud place. People are screaming, take this super and go to this and whatever. And it was just silent. And it's very eerie to hear that back again. I felt like I'm right there, and it's silent, it's quiet, because everyone knows if it gets to him, then it's a big deal, and we knew before it was, sometime before we saw damage. Because one thing I can tell you that I learned from Gary is you stay with the storm until your viewing area is no longer under threat. And that was something that sometimes was a bit of an argument in the newsroom between Gary and newsroom managers. Hey, we want to see the damage. We've got this damage shot in Chickasha. Well, the tornado is still on the ground and is, going through more. And he was very adamant that you don't leave the storm until people are no longer, public safety is no longer a threat. And that's something that, I remind people of and teach it at OU. That's your number one job, is to keep people safe. Yes, we want to see the damage and how bad is it and what does it look like from the air or whatever. But, your number one priority is alerting the public.
I mean, yes, and we still do that. Yes, I mean it's yes. I mean there's been times where we've had like we'll bring down another helicopter and we'll have like a box up or shows damage up here or something. But yeah, you have to stay with them. When you lit that clip, I chased May 3rd of '99 from start to end like Val, and I was thinking about that video right there. When in my head, there's no video, but I could picture that. And that day, I remember there was a little bit of relief because it cycled. It cycled several times, but it produced a big tornado at Chickasha, hit the airport, went southeast. It lifted briefly. There were still suction spots. I was about a mile from it, but and when it set back down for the last time, the final time is when it set back down, it was a mile wide. But there was like about a 2-minute gap in there where it had lifted. Remember, all of this was all live. But at this time, we all had technology. We all had the same. You're all seeing it. You're seeing it live from, chase cars. We're all out there. But I was in Amber, and I remember for just a split second, we had a 2-minute, and it was cycling. But is it going to cycle and die, or is it going to, is this going to be it? And then it instantly went from that to the last wedge of the day, and it was the biggest tornado of the day when it was near Amber. And right there when he was talking, that's when it was coming up on Amber and it slowed down, and I'm just picturing all that in my mind, and the traffic on I-44, and that was something we'd never been through. I mean, when I was at K4, we always talked about, we set up, we always talked about, the next Wichita Falls and the next, Andover, Kansas, and all these big days, like every 10 years, 1990, 1991, all these. And, that was the first for all of us that day. And I went back, because and I've seen a lot of his coverage. I've watched that back in the day, and I've watched some of it still. I mean, in the last 4 or 5 years, May 3rd, and it was so overwhelming for what was happening because none of us had experienced that before. And, it's coming through your major metropolitan area. It's at peak, a little bit after drive home, but a lot of people on the roads. But yeah, I just, it's just kind of weird to hear all that. It brings back a lot of memories from that day, and how crazy it was that day to cover that. I'm just thinking about because that was the first for him. He had never, none of us had. That was the first for all of us to experience something like that. And I was just in the field reporting, at K4. But anyway, it's, how many times have we done that? How many times did he end up doing that again? So just crazy.
Yeah, David, I'm going to jump in because that is the point I was going to make, and you made it really well. We've talked a lot about May 3rd, 99, and May 20th of 2013 and May 31st. And everybody has a plan for the way they want to cover severe weather. And you're going to run this plan, but then you get events like that are so extraordinarily unprecedented. What's our plan for something that we've never done before? And how he performed in these incredibly unprecedented weather events was just top notch, just amazing and inspirational.
I want to follow on with that. It really strikes me that you guys, all of you working in broadcast, any given day where there's severe weather that's possible, including things like flooding, you could very well be live on air witnessing the completely, like you were talking about, James, like the unprecedented, that something that has never happened before. And it can happen in both the dimensions of the physical, that it's like maybe a catastrophic crazy flood or a terrible tornado going through a metro area, but it's increasingly becoming the human dimension too. In Oklahoma, we're starting to see people evacuate, and there's a whole, interesting thing to unpack there about, is this a good thing? Is this a thing that's exacerbated by all of the new kinds of communication media we have? And, there's a diversity now of voices that, people are listening to, and there's just so much in all of that. But you're witnessing that too. And you're sort of being called upon. You're the trusted person, the weight that has to be on your shoulders. And, I think about in Gary's time, how much he saw all of that change. It had to be such a stark change from giving, here's some, we're able to give you some basic facts. Great. Like, we're actually able to do coverage of this, like that, all of that was sort of born in his career, all the way to, oh my gosh, we have to actively try to manage an unfolding live disaster and be that voice in the midst of it. I mean, it's both a reflection of him, but also you all, as you're carrying forward this legacy, and you're in this world now. Does that resonate with you? Have you had to cover things that you have, felt like, what? and felt that pressure of having to be sort of the thing between people and the disaster that has both the physical part and the human part? I'm seeing some nods here, and
Yeah.
Lacy, Lacy, David, go ahead and share.
Go ahead, Lace.
I mean, I feel like every single event, I mean, that's why we're all so driven to this science, is we truly don't know what's going to happen. And almost every single event is unprecedented in some way. There's no two events that are the same. And so we're covering it live. And I learned that from him, and I learned that from David. You don't jump on something and say, what's happening. You're not going to say this is going here. This is exactly what's going to happen, because if it turns, people's lives are at stake. People are listening to what you're saying, and our words matter so much. And that is a very heavy task. And I think we feel that a lot. That's why we have a team of people, because, we check each other. David, did you just say that's turning right? I'm seeing it lift further north, and those little bitty tiny changes, they matter. We've seen so many things unfold. I mean, last spring, the tornadoes in Southwest Oklahoma were unbelievable. Some of them did complete circles, things that I had never seen in my career. I mean, we thought that storms were headed one direction to the northeast, and before you know it, it's turning north, and now it's turning back west. Like, what in the world? And I, as a younger meteorologist, I just try to soak all that in and remember that. Don't ever just completely buy a forecast. This is what's going to happen, because we do not know how this is going to play out. One of Gary's winter weather, I mean, it's a whole different subject. We're talking more severe weather, but winter weather is the same thing. And in Oklahoma, my goodness, you know, you've got to put pen to paper and you've got to make a forecast. But it was his last winter at Channel 9. We had this big winter storm that was coming in, and it looked like this is going to be, I mean, possibly historic blizzard totals. But how early do you tell people that? When do you start alerting the public? How far is it going to make it? Some of the data brought it into the Oklahoma City metro and other data did not. Well, when do you start using the proper language and the proper verbiage to make people start preparing? And we all as a weather team had this. And David, you'll remember this storm.
February 13th.
It was coming. It was coming. And then eventually it's like, okay, this is like the next day. It's happening.
Yeah.
The blizzard warnings come out. It's also going to be ice. That dang storm, it did not snow one drop east of Highway 81. Highway 81 West, which is our western metro, blitzed snow. And we had wet roads and rain. Yeah. And that was so early in my career, but I had to watch how David handled that. I had to watch, he had to go on air. I just wanted to call him sick. Gary had to go back on air that night at 10.
Yeah.
You know, how do you handle that? How do you handle when things pivot and things change? So sometimes it changes for the worse. Sometimes you end up with this day's not going to be bad, and now you've got a catastrophic tornado, or sometimes you're forecasting a blizzard and you get rain. And it's all how you handle it. And I think it's all the rapport that you build with the public, where they're going to say, oh, okay, I understand why you went that way. And he taught me so much in the verbiage of that, and how to explain that and how to communicate that to the public. And I'm still learning constantly.
Yeah, the viewers will hang you out to dry. That I happened to be, it was my first winter, spring, and it was in 2013. So I was actually in the field. I'd worked the day, but whatever. We were all talking about it. Hey, heavy wet snow, blizzard conditions, you know, blizzard watch came out. I think it included Oklahoma City. I think. And we were like Oklahoma City West or something. And it was all rain here, like she said. But I was in Woodward, so I was able to say, hey, verified up here, because we had like 20 inches of snow. And I was like, woo, blizzard here. And yeah, but we all got lit up for that. And, you know, just like we all do, you have to pivot. But you're talking about, you know, dealing with it and you know, because I was I didn't see him on those big days because I was in the field chasing. We worked together for 6 months. And maybe Lacy can speak more on this, but like I said earlier, on some of these big days that we had, you know, this year, but last year we had 152 tornadoes last year, all this stuff. But on the days that, like I said, we know what's happening, I will either pitch to her, I'll pitch to a tracker, I'll pitch to Lacy. And if I know that things are about ready to get bad, or they're getting bad for just a split second, I will step off screen, drink some water. But it's just kind of how I bring everything back to center, because it's all on us, right? And you want to say the right things. And so I don't know if Gary ever did that or not. I don't know if he ever stepped off and just kind of because if you don't, it just keeps going, and you've got to just, and some of these high-end days where, you know, we've all seen it. I've seen horrible things in the field, and I've lived it, you know, and I just think the pressure can be a little much. And I think being able to do that. So Lacy, I don't know, did he ever step off? I do it with you, and
sure. I was next to him.
Hang on a second. Let's regroup, you know, and then get back in here. But
yeah, I was next to him physically, next to the May 19th, 2013 tornado for the May 20th, right, and then the May 31st of 2013. We had like a little weather center pod, and he was in there. Michael Armstrong was in there, and so was I. So the three of us basically just stood hip to hip. And he would toss to Michael, but really his way of doing that was he would toss to a storm tracker. So when he would toss out in the field and they would take that, that's when he would, okay, collect myself. What am I missing? He was constantly asking that. What am I missing? What am I missing? What has changed? And he would kind of check in with everybody. He would check in with the people behind the scenes. Everybody good? Is everything working? You know? And I think that was his way of, you know, orchestrating in that way. But then when it got serious, and this is something that's different, just the way that we do TV now is different. But he would look at the camera operator and he would say, take my shot, which meant take my face, take me full. And he would talk to the camera in that way. And we don't necessarily even have that opportunity at this point, but it would be like a tight shot on his face. That's when he would generally talk to kids or whatever. It was very, very serious. He would say, hey, take my shot, take me full. I want to get this out. And then it was right back to the maps, and doing what he was doing. And I think that was his way of, okay, we got to center and we got to figure this out. It was just in a different style.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing that. And I'm trying to watch the YouTube comments here on the side too. And Molly, Gary's daughter, checked in and she said she is so grateful for the kind words about her father. And just from us, the WeatherBrains group, and Barbara and David and Lacy too, our hearts are broken with you, Molly, and I hope all of these really kind words that you're hearing about your dad and these great stories are bringing you a little bit of comfort right now. I know it's not much, but we hope that's the case.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to start winding down here now, but we'll just kind of go around and throw it open if anybody has any final comments you want to mention about Gary, any stories, any quick things you want to be sure that gets in here. I think this has been a great time to share memories of Gary, and we could probably go on for hours and hours. But I'll just kind of throw it open. Troy, I think you've got something to start out.
I want to thank David and Lacy for spending time with us tonight and to hear the great stories. I had a chance to meet Gary once or twice, but just didn't know him all that well. I know him a lot more now. Also want to say something about Barbara, and if she ever left Austin, it probably was because of Troy. She probably ran screaming. But let me tell you something about Barbara, because we always talk about the future of where this business is going, where broadcast is going in the future. Last year in Myrtle Beach, Barbara and a bunch of her students from OU Nightly, I think we're in Myrtle Beach at the AMS broadcasters meeting. And I went up to visit with Barbara and talk to her, but also had to talk to some of her students. And I've got to tell you what an amazing leader, a newsroom leader, Barbara is. She is amazing. And what she instills in those students, and you could see the sparkle in their eyes just by being there with Barbara. I heard so many things from the students. So I want to mention Barbara here for a second about what she does and what she has done. And Barbara, it's great to see you as usual.
Well, thank you, Troy. And I'm really serious when I say a lot of what I try to teach the broadcast meteorology students at OU is it's everybody that I've worked with, but Gary started a lot of it, and Troy jokes about, honestly, the first F5 in that day that I ever covered as a producer was the Gerald, Texas tornado. That's when we worked together.
Right.
And, I'm in the newsroom going, well, Gary England would have said this, or Gary would have done this, it's you. If you grew up as a fan, if you worked with him behind the scenes, if you were part of his weather team or a weather producer or a camera operator, you knew how serious he was when it was time to be serious. But the one kind of thing I want to make sure that we mention is really, I talked a little bit about the entertainment side and stuff. If you hadn't seen Gary England in the tent at the state fair with or without Spike the Pig, I mean, that man knew Oklahoma. He knew his fans. He knew the state fair viewers, and he could talk like nobody's business. He met the audience, shook their hand, signed the autographs, all that stuff. But born and raised in Oklahoma, but he knew Oklahoma weather and he knew its people. And that's what I try to get through to our students. I crosstalk is important, and nobody did crosstalk except maybe David and Lacy and Robin sometimes, but nobody did crosstalk like Gary England. I mean, he was just, you were laughing at the end, even if it was going to snow, he was cracking you up. And so that's what I try to get them to do. Excellent weather with a side of personality.
You do an amazing job, Barbara.
Hey, real quick, Barbara, when did we work together?
At K4, when I was the morning producer and you were the weekend morning weather.
Oh my, was that long ago?
Yeah. Long time ago. I
thought it was like,
David,
sorry.
I do say one time we had 3 packages that weren't there and you went 7 minutes on a Sunday morning. But yeah, that's
wow.
And yeah,
That's
I
easy.
just kept saying, just keep going, David. We don't have any video.
Oh my gosh, I forgot. Yeah. So that was okay. So
yeah, and
wow,
then I was back from Dallas. I was at 9 when you first came in. But like you said, you were out in the field a lot. So
well, yeah, I started in 1st of 93.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I would have worked with you in
2001.
Yeah, well, at K4 it would have been I think end of 95, 96 into 97.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, right after I'd been there a few years, but yeah. Okay. Well, good seeing you again. I haven't seen you in forever. And so I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's awesome. Yeah, you're doing a great job. I mean, killing it. So.
We're trying to, turn out the next generation. And right. I always say, a lot of people talk about, local news is dying. And I always say, it's never going to die because people need it for weather. And, they may watch us on their phones instead of their TV set, but broadcast news, weather will always be important to broadcast.
Yeah. Right.
And we keep hiring all your people, Barbara.
Well, I mean,
yeah, so do we.
Lacy have, Megan is one of our, Megan Gold is OU Nightly, one of our students. So, yeah.
Yeah, she's one of our new hires. Yeah, she was in Tulsa. We stole her from Tulsa, but yeah.
They're everywhere. I mean, the placement rate has to be incredible. Great program for sure.
Well, it is. So if we do get some students that come through and they, for whatever reason, decide I'm going to stay and I want to get my master's, or I want to go into field meteorology. If they go through the OU Nightly program and they want to be a broadcast meteorologist, we have 100% job placement. I mean, it's not like we're promising you're getting a job, but they all get a job somewhere eventually if they want it. Some of them change their minds, and that's okay. They get in and see what, being on the green screen and the crosstalk is about, and they say, okay, maybe this isn't for me. But if they want it, it's there.
That's awesome. We've talked a lot about Gary on the air and Gary being entertaining when the weather wasn't super urgent or life threatening. One other aspect that I'll always remember is that he just didn't take no for an answer. I'm sure as Barbara knows really well, but this goes back to the beginning or even into the early 80s and the ownership was great with John Griffin ponying up a ton of money to Enterprise to build a Doppler radar that they weren't even going to get for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
First one. Can you imagine? I mean, I could go to my owner now and say, hey, I need a pirate ship full of money, and we're not going to see anything from it for 2, maybe 3 years. And then once we get it, we got to figure out how to work the thing. So, I mean, it's just a visionary and didn't say no just because things were done a particular way. Why is that? He was a classic example of asking yes and Molly chimed in and said I don't know how to thank you all individually. Please know our heart is full tonight and we appreciate every sweet comment. Isn't that one? I love you, Molly.
Sweet.
Yeah, I was going to say, James Spann and I go to a lot of colleges and we talk about how to get a job. And James and I always say to be different. Gary England was a pioneer and a maverick. You just heard about the radar. I had heard he told his owner, if you get a Doppler weather radar, I will give you #1 rankings, period. So, what are you doing in college right now to be the next Gary England, the next James Spann, the Alabama Weather Network, 24 hours a day, James Spann? What are you doing to be like Ryan Hall, Max Velocity? What are you doing? He's a good role model that you should think about. He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, this has been great. I mean, we could literally talk all night. We didn't even get to talk about what the thunder lizard or there's lots of other things we could talk about. Gary's legacy will live on and on. All the innovation, he was the first this, the first that, and just an awesome partner to us at the Weather Service and an awesome person for the people of Oklahoma. So James Spann will kind of throw it over to you now and take us into the last segment of the show here.
Yeah, let me just say too, for a Gary England, he's a little older than me, not much older, but he was a little older than me, and he kind of paved the way for people like me to do what we do, and I'm always thankful for that. And it seems like just from listening to the stories, and I really never had a chance to meet him in person. We've had him on the show here 3 times, and that's the main time we've interacted, but he just seemed like a nice guy, and he seemed like he loved his job. I get the idea Gary was the kind of guy that loved coming to work every day, even on blue sky days. And I just love people like that. And, my wish for everybody on this show and for everybody listening to this show is that you wake up and you get to go to work and love what you do. You can't wait. You can't wait to wake up and go do what you do. And I think Gary was in that position, which means he was very blessed. And I've been that way all my life, so it's been great to listen to these stories tonight. And thanks to all of you for coming on the show. And if anybody has to leave, David, I know that you're working tonight, but if anybody has to leave, we understand that. But if you can hang on for a few more minutes, we're going to do Picks of the Week in a minute, where everybody's going to go around the horn and share something that's weather-related, something that's cool. Before we do that, we're going to hear from Tony Rice and the Astronomy Report. We have Jen and This Week in Tornado History and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
A team of researchers at the University of Arizona published a paper in the journal Geology last week, describing their theory that a meteor crater formed over 50,000 years ago outside the fabled corner in Winslow, Arizona, triggered an earthquake felt 100 miles to the northwest in the Grand Canyon. The research points to a relatively small 3.5 magnitude seismic event that triggered a landslide that dammed up the Colorado River temporarily, creating a lake. The team arrived at their conclusion based on radiocarbon dating of driftwood and other associated slackwater lake sediments that have been preserved in the caves about 60 meters above the modern Colorado River along the Nankoweap Trail, one of the most difficult hikes along the canyon. Interestingly, that same driftwood that helps establish the meteor impact at around 55.6 million years ago. Elsewhere in the sky, look for the waning crescent moon to slide between Venus and Jupiter in the pre-dawn hours this week. Tuesday morning's the best to see the trio as the new moon disappears from view by Wednesday. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, on July 21st, 1987, an F4 tornado tracked across the Teton Wilderness into Yellowstone National Park. Over 1 million trees were knocked down as the tornado slashed its way across mountaintops up to 10,000 feet high and through valleys. This is the highest altitude in the United States that a violent tornado, an F4 or F5, has ever occurred. Dr. Ted Fujita observed F4 damage to a swath of trees along Gravel Ridge shortly after the tornado developed. He noted that Engelmann spruce trees that were 12 to 15 inches thick were easily toppled and had their bark stripped off. The topsoil that was scoured from the ground was plastered against these debarked trees. Some of the trees were even pulled up from the ground and carried a considerable distance. The tornado produced a swath of damage at 24 miles long and up to 1.6 miles wide. Dr. Fujita also found a total of 72 microbursts that accompanied the tornado, making the swath of blowdown in some areas up to 2.5 miles wide. He believed that the large number of microbursts around the tornado helped to maintain the vortex in such topography.
Hey, just maybe we've got some email to read this week.
Okay, Jen is on break, and we got a lot of email about the flash floods in Texas. So I'm going to read a version of one from a former lead forecaster, John Lewis, in the Little Rock office. He said, I love the WeatherBrains program on the flood disaster in Texas. It was a great discussion. 3 factors really stand out to me. Happened in the middle of the night. The region was exceptionally flood prone, and people didn't feel they were in imminent danger. Before, he left the weather service. He said, I worked the night of the Albert Pike. I know an event like this very, very seriously. What can we do to get people's attention when we put a flood watch up? Is a flood watch going to get your attention? What should we do? The end of this, James, talks about, I really feel we need more gauges on the Guadalupe River. If you could do something, have more gauges, it would ring the weather service in Austin, San Antonio when the water reaches a certain threshold. Then forecasters could convey to emergency personnel that a life-threatening epic flood is coming. The office in Little Rock now has this capability along the Spring River from Fulton into Sharp counties. The phone goes off. The mayor, the police department, weather service, everyone knows, and we help protect life. So I'll just tell you this really quick and turn it over to Troy. I know you want to say something. There's a company called Starlink, which is now doing that. And they're looking at places in America where you set your threshold on that gauge. And it doesn't matter if you have bad cell coverage. They're working with cell companies to get that to emergency people. Second thing, the USGS, I know in Eastern Kentucky, is adding gauges, which will hopefully do the same thing, have the capability to ring when it hits a certain level. And we received a lot of email about the flood show, James. Just a lot of people love that show. So I don't know if Troy or anybody else wants to say anything.
Yeah, Troy had to leave a little early, and I was going to. David Payne, do you have any thoughts on the flooding in Texas, the warning process, and the way that whole thing worked? Any thoughts on your end?
Let me just say, I was on vacation last week, and I watched your 5-hour flood special. I'm kidding. It was great. Last week, I was on vacation. I watched it, listened on the plane, and it was really, 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 really good. Yeah, my in-laws and my sister-in-law live in Boerne, Texas, which is 30 miles southeast of Kerrville. And so I was texting them the day before and 2 days before, because they've been in a horrible drought. I mean, they water once a week, the water rationing. It's been horrible down there for 5 years or longer. I said, hey, you're going to get some nice rains coming up. We were down there mid-June. This is what was crazy to me. There's definitely a messaging problem. I was down there in mid-June for my wife's birthday, took her back to the in-laws in Boerne, just outside of Boerne. 12 people lost their lives in San Antonio that one night. 12. And I was blown away. And I was up watching the coverage. because I'm, it's a different market and I'm here. And it was insane to me. And everybody it wasn't a Guadalupe deal. It was everyone drove into water. And Rick, you probably heard me say this. I quit saying, if you turn around, don't drown. This year I started saying, turn around or die. Those have been my words this year. Rick, I think the last total is now 7 in Oklahoma this year, and every one of them, people driving into water. So I've been talking to the weather team, and we're trying to figure out we've got to do a better job the campaigning about people simply driving into water. I don't get it. Makes me so angry. I don't understand it. People, every age, doesn't matter. Adults, younger people, down there, that's a whole different animal, and I get it. But the money, it's all about money. even down there. That's one of the craziest places. You can't drive around San Antonio. Even downtown, you're downtown San Antonio. There's a sign every 2 blocks that says flood, and there's a foot marker, and all, it's everywhere. I mean, they have it down there all the time. But everybody that down there that died when I was down there mid-June, they all drove into water. 12 people in one night. Like I said, we've lost 7 this year in Oklahoma. That's the last count. So I don't know. I feel like we talk about it, but down there it was just a horrible. It's so many things came together in the wrong way, just as bad as it can get. But the messaging, the ways to be able to get these warnings out, and for people to take them seriously, for some reason, even though it's the number 2 killer in the U.S., depends on the year. I get it, but it's not the video. It's not the tornado warning. It's not as sexy as the tornado warning and all that. But man, people they don't listen. They just don't listen, and it drives me nuts. But this year, seriously, I started it the last couple of years, but this year is, turn around, don't die. I don't want to put you on TV. I don't want to put your car being pulled out of a ravine with you still in it. I said that this year. I'm losing my mind. Because people are doing it. I'm trying to send the message. You drive into water, we're gonna have your video of you being, your truck being extracted, because it's just, I don't know. That whole thing down there was so sad. I think like all of us. When I was listening to your WeatherBrains of that the week after, it was horrible. The kids, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it almost needs to be a new campaign, more serious than anything that we do, because people continue to do it. And getting the warning out. And I get it. I just look at all those people that were swept up. Obviously, some people were getting warnings. Some people were using their phone and being able to get a warning and got a call or got a text or their phone went off, but there's no reason why any of that should ever happen. No reason. I don't know. It was horrible.
Hey, Barbara, any thoughts on your end?
I was going to say, I think one of the things that, David, I see you do this a lot, and Mike and Damon do it too. Talking about landmarks and talking about what people are doing. In Oklahoma City, if there's a storm moving, we have a huge Baptist church, Camp Falls Creek, in the Davis Ardmore area. Anytime hey, there may be a storm headed towards Falls Creek, I think calling out landmarks to people. I'm not familiar with exactly what was on the air, and it also was in the middle of the night, so we don't know that they were
right,
how effective it was. But I think saying, hey, if you've got kids we know there were 10 to 12 camps along that part of the river. If you have kids out there, maybe check in with the camp. If you know somebody camping along the river this weekend, everyone in Oklahoma City does a great job. If there's a state park, if you know somebody out on the lake, encouraging individuals, call them, text them, get a hold of the kids' camp, your relatives that are out on the lake. There's a lot, yes, that the government can do, warning systems, things like that. But I think on the broadcast side, having people say that on the air and also put it out on social, saying, hey, we got a storm headed towards Falls Creek. If your church is at Falls Creek this week, get in touch with somebody. That might have helped, a few of those people either in the campgrounds or at the kids' camps that night.
And Kim, I think you as a social scientist, behavioral expert, you were saying amen, right?
I love all of that. It's so right on. It's not just up to the technology. It's not just up to the weather service or any single person to do this. We're a community of people. It's on all of us to help keep our families, our friends, our neighbors safe. And so, Barbara, I just love everything that you were talking about. And David, I feel like, as I was listening to you talk about the turnaround, don't drown, or turnaround, don't die, I something we didn't talk about on our show, but has occurred to me since, that is probably important to think about, is so much of our messaging is about drivers and to not drive. And in this case, we were asking people to spontaneously evacuate actually. Like that's what they would have needed to do to
Yeah.
survive.
Right.
Oh, that takes something so different. That just takes a completely different kind of communication campaign. And
Yes.
that takes signage, that takes planning, and you can plan for it. We have evacuation planning. I think something that we mentioned briefly on the show was about Oregon, like the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington. They have plans for tsunami. So that's a very rapid evacuation that needs to take place. There's a warning, there's signage, people know, okay, it's an evacuation alert. This is the thing we've got to do. Hotels, places where you have tourists, because this is one of the big things. People not from the area have no idea what's going on. You need to have it practiced in your institutions so that they can move those people. That is something we could conceivably do along these floodways, but we've got to put it together. So David, when you're talking about, there's a whole new campaign that needs to happen here. I think that's right. I think that we've got to rethink, think bigger about how we're talking about flood messaging. Because, there's times where we want to just stop people from driving through the flooded roads. That's at least half of all flood fatalities are people driving into the floods. And it's so frustrating because it's so preventable. That's what makes it so frustrating. And there's this other set of very vulnerable places that lie in riverine areas, the almost dry stream beds, where they have a different problem. And so maybe this is something we can focus on as a community, is differentiating the kinds of flooding and what people have to do in different circumstances.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to share everything, but I got a unique perspective on this whole hill country flood thing last week when I was asked to go down to the Austin San Antonio office and help them with anything I could help with. But I ended up helping with a lot of the flood surveys. For the first time since the flooding happened, the Weather Service actually got out to do on the ground surveys in Kerr County, Kendall County. I've never done a flood survey in my life. I was not really prepared to be out in the field doing it, but man, what an experience. I've walked around a lot of tornado damage, just like David has and others have. This was just completely different. The scale, the scope, the vertical aspect, seeing the recovery efforts going on and the cleanup going on almost 2 weeks after the flood happened. I mean, we're used to being out there the morning after the tornado and everything's happening fast. It was overwhelming and such an amazing experience. I could talk on and on about it. Maybe we can talk more about it on the next show. But yeah, I'm so glad I got the opportunity to do it, and I have a whole new respect for hydrologists, for people that have to forecast river levels and extreme events. The people that were issuing the warnings, getting to meet the people at the New Braunfels office who were issuing the warnings, and just did heroic things that people will never know how much work went into what they were doing. And they issued a flash flood emergency with no reports whatsoever. I mean, that's not really usually how it works. I mean, I could go on, but newfound respect for everybody at that office, everybody in that area, the recovery efforts that are going on. I saw vehicles from Nashville, from Kansas City, talked to a search and rescue team member from New York City. Anyway, it was overwhelming and very heartening to see all the support there. And I mean, there's a lot of work to do with flooding for sure, but yeah. So we can talk more about
Rick,
it.
have all of the missing folks been identified and found, or where do we stand?
As is the case, and Kim could talk more about this, as is the case with lots of big disasters, these numbers of missing and unaccounted for fluctuate a lot, and sometimes the number of missing and unaccounted for get automatically equated to fatalities. The good news over the weekend was we went from having 160 unaccounted for or missing to 3. So, that was 3 in Kerr County. It may be slightly higher than that, but very much lower. That's still a lot, and there's still going to be people out there those people are going to be digging in the mud and with chainsaws and dogs and everything until every last person is accounted for. But yeah, the number went way down over the weekend. Thank goodness.
Yeah, we'll need to do a full debrief on that maybe next week, Rick. But again,
Yep.
thanks for your work out there, because it just, the whole thing being on the ground, it just would be horrific to see that. So, and quickly, Rick, how are the forecasters, the meteorologists doing from New Braunfels? They doing okay?
I think they're doing as well as they can be. I mean, they've had a lot of support. They've had a lot of pizza. They may be getting sick of pizza after a while. Lots of people sending nice comments. And while I was there, the day I stayed in the office, we actually had Ken Graham do a special staff meeting just for that group. I know they've had mental health experts come in and talk to them. They're doing everything right and doing everything they can. They have nothing to be ashamed of at all. They did everything they could. They did some incredible things. And yeah, so they're hanging in there.
That's good. All right, so the time is we're about out here, so we're going to morph into picks of the week. This is where everybody that's remaining on the panel here on the show will share something cool and weather related. This can be a website, data source, hardware, software, anything remotely related to weather, and we'll put all the picks up on the website, weatherbrains.com. So let's get our TV folks out of here first. Let's see. James A., are you working the TV side tonight?
I'm not,
looks like you
but I'll
might be.
go.
You're okay. Well, go. Tell us what you got.
This is very Troy Kimmel-like. I'm channeling my Troy Kimmel. As I pull a book off the shelf.
Oh, there you go.
Gary England, Those Terrible Twisters. And you can tell this is the book that a weather geek in high school had, because it is worn slick.
That's the second one, I believe.
Yeah. When was that originally published, David?
That one came out, well, the first one came out in the 70s. And I think
Yeah.
that's the second one. If I'm not, James, I think that's 87. Yeah. Yeah, the first one came out.
Wow.
And I had both of them too. Yeah.
Wow. Outstanding. Okay, so Rick Smith, give us your pick of the week.
Well, my pick of the week is also Gary England related. I don't know if it was the Oklahoma History Center or who exactly, but they did a sit-down interview with Gary England years ago, maybe involved with his induction into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, another big honor that was bestowed on him. But there's it's over 2 hours of Gary England sitting and answering questions. If you're really into Gary England and want to learn more about the man, the myth, the legend, it's a really interesting YouTube video. So that's my pick of the week.
And again, this will be up on weatherbrains.com. Mine is a meteo tsunami that occurred on the Great Lakes a month ago, back on the 21st of June. Tremendous rise-fall couplet at Whitefish Bay. And those things fascinate me. And again, it's from the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. So again, we'll put that up on weatherbrains.com. John Gordon, Mamatis Man, what's your pick of the week?
Hey, everybody. Do you know all these people are acting like that the summer rain we've had this year is the worst since Jesus was on the earth? Okay. It has rained before. So my pick of the week comes from the Office of Water Prediction, which tells you all the rainfall records. By the way, does anyone on this panel know what the world's 1 hour rainfall record is? Anybody know?
Hawaii?
No, it's in the US.
Alvin.
1947. Anybody know?
Birmingham.
No, Holt, Missouri. 12 inches. 12 inches. And people act like this year is the worst since Jesus walked on the Sea of Galilee. Okay? The 24-hour rainfall record is at La Reunion Island. How many inches fell there? 72.
Wow.
So know what you're talking about records before you speak it. It's better to be silent and thought of as a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Know your weather history like Gary England did. Thank you very much.
That's a great pick. I love that. So often we hear people say, this has never happened before. It's unprecedented. Well, maybe you don't know history. Go study it sometime. Things happened before you were born. So that's a great pick. Okay, Kim, give us a pick of the week, please, ma'am.
Sure, mine is quick. It's just going to be the appropriations bills coming out in the House and the Senate that highlight the support our community has from Congress. And there's been a lot of fretting going on about, the National Severe Storms Lab here in Norman being closed outright, and all, all the labs, and all the infrastructure, whatever. The process is playing out. Take deep breaths, everybody. We have so much support, and especially in the wake of what just happened in the Texas floods, we're a very recognized part of the public safety infrastructure, and that recognition is improving. Chin up, chin up.
And I detect bipartisan support across the board, and I fully agree with your positive attitude here, Kim. So great. Okay, David Payne, give us a pick of the week. It's up to you.
Well,
Go. Floor belongs to you.
Yeah, well, I heard you, and I've heard you talk about this before, about the jet contrails and all this craziness that we have been dealing with, and it's getting worse. And the gentleman that tried to destroy our radar has been arrested. He was arrested the next 2 days later, and now he's been fully charged. So it's just crazy. I mean, last week after it happened, and the head of that group showed up at our station, I went to go get a cup of coffee down the street, and I had the armed guard following me down the street, and been dealing with that for the last 10 days. So, and I heard you say, you've had some crazy stuff. You've had to turn. We have to deal with it too, but we'll see. I know we'll see what happens with this group, but he has now been officially charged by the Attorney General, and we're going to go from there. But just a crazy, crazy world. Have you guys had a WeatherBrains on all that yet? Have you guys done anything touching base on?
Right.
Not on the terrorists, and
we're scared. We're scared too, honestly.
Really quickly, David, for those that don't know, how much damage was done to the radar facility by this guy?
Well, he climbed over a fence, and as he did, he got his crotch caught. Which
show title
in there.
Show title.
Show title right there.
And we kind of froze that picture, and you can tell he's like, man, this might not have been a good idea. And so he gets in, and then it could have been worse. Getting into the actual radar hut is a different challenge, but he was able to do damage on the outside, and he was only a cable or two away from really becoming sparky. You know what I mean? But he was able to do enough on the outside to bring it down. And my first question was, I said, because I got a call that evening late, the radar's down. I was like, okay. And they go, well, it was, broken into. And I said, oh, somebody's stealing copper. And they're like, no, it didn't steal anything. And then the video came out. The video was very clear and got cameras all over it. So, but he took it down. The next day we had it back up and running. But, when I went on the air and I said, it's just crazy. I mean, we don't control the weather. I wish we could. If we could control it, we wouldn't have, Texas, we wouldn't have droughts. I mean, these people, it's a whole different world. So anyway, I don't know. The radar's back up, but he's been charged, and hopefully they're going to hang him out to dry. So anyway, what's that?
All right. We do live in strange times. I mean, we live in very strange times, and but I'm glad the radar is back. Okay, Barbara, give us a pick of the week. You're up.
Well, I will say that Mr. Adelot did not forewarn me on this, but I have somebody that I think all of you should start following, and it's a young man named Willie Gillespie. He is from Chicagoland, and he's a student at OU, rising junior, and actually has changed his major from meteorology to journalism, and is doing a lot of work with OU Daily. Also, yes, he's on OU Nightly, but this summer he has shown what, I think a lot of the stations in Oklahoma City, they're there, they see it, it's a blip on the radar, and it's gone. But he's really done a great job of covering the reaction in Norman to the pending legislation and the possible cuts. And he's out in front of the sign that says National Weather Center a couple of times a week and showing, the little signs that people are leaving. He's talking to students. faculty and staff about what this would mean. And so I just think it's a great example of the work of a college student really on, at ground zero here at the National Weather Center, documenting things. So his name's Willie Gillespie. He's on all the platforms, or find him at OU Daily or OUnightly.com.
If I can just
We'll put
say
the links
something
up on-
about that, and I've reached out to people at the Weather Service when all this has been going on. I reached out last week or week before when the Nestle thing came down, and I get it because those people can't say anything, right? So it's hard to find and tell people at home and viewers what they're like. Well, what impacts is it going to have? We don't know. I mean, and I know. I guess we don't know because some of them haven't been, and obviously we don't want it to happen, and we don't want to have any to report on any. Oh, this is going to happen. But it would be nice to have some idea. You know what? This is if these are the cuts that are made. This is what we're going to lose. Give people at home some idea of what could be gone or what possibly or this or that. I mean, sometimes it's right now it's kind of vague. Oh well, just cuts. Okay. Well, how is that gonna? I don't know. I just wish I wish there were. I wish it was more out there that we could see some of these things. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Hey, Barbara, real quick, is there anything you need to plug? How do people watch your organization?
OU Nightly is live when classes are in session. We do a rehearsal for the first 2 weeks. We have freshmen that come in the fall, live on YouTube and Facebook. And I give props to OU Daily as well. They're the digital or the print side of journalism at OU. They have a very robust website, do a great job, covering Norman news. But if there's severe weather in the Norman area, we are live streaming, and we're on the Cox cable channel in Norman. We used to be able to be on in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, but they've hubbed master control at Cox, and so we can't get on as easily. But Facebook and YouTube, best way to find it.
There you go. David Payne, anything you need to plug here? Plug away.
No, we had a long spring, and we're kind of relaxing right now. It was a crazy year. We had a bunch of tornadoes and flooding and all that, but you can find us about everywhere now. I don't know. It's like you guys. We're YouTube. We're about on every platform there is. And I hear something new. I'm like, where are we now? So, Google News 9, and we're on separate channel. We're doing so much more now than we ever were, which is great. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's more work, but it's where we live now. So. It's all good.
It is where we live now. Times change. So listen, but it's been a great show tonight. I've learned a lot about Gary England, and I appreciate everybody's time. I know that everybody is busy here, but for those that are new, we are typically on the air Monday nights at 7:00 Central, 8:00 Eastern, youtube.com/WeatherBrains. But we know that most of you listen to the audio podcast. If you watch or listen, thank you. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless. Thanks, everybody. It's a great show. Great show.
David, thanks so much.
Hey, Kim, I need to hire you. I need you on severe weather days.